Yep. Hope this is working. Can only find out, can't we, eh? To see how it goes. Right. So today in this class, I'm going to be going out. I'm going to be going through shoot for layout. So I'll be talking about how we choose images for the layout. So we start right from the beginning of deciding which images are going to go where on which page and how we're going to put that together. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And then Steve's going to be going through a demo on how he would edit our front cover picture. So what the procedure he would go through using the Affinity Photo. It's Affinity Photo, isn't it? Yeah, Affinity Photo, yeah. So Steve will be going through that. So if you've got any questions, put them into the Padlet page, because Steve's monitoring that, and it works a lot better than trying to use the chat in the Teams thing. We can monitor that a little bit more easily than we can with the chat. So any questions, put it into the Padlet page for us, and that will work well. In terms of what we're going to be doing over the next few weeks, like I said, next week we're going to be doing the Affinity Publisher. So Steve's going to be doing an online demo for that, how you can use Publisher to start laying out your magazine. You don't have to use Publisher, but it's one that we recommend. We've got some news coming through on the Affinity side of things, which will help the students, but we can't let that bit of news out at the moment, but it is good news. So that will help you out. So I highly recommend you using Affinity, because we can all support that in the best way. So we're doing that next week. The following week, we're then doing another online class like this one. And then after that, I'll be putting some talks up onto our Moodle, but hopefully if we're not in lockdown or anything like that, I'm going to start arranging smaller meetups for us so that we can meet up outside and do some photography outside. But we've just got to wait to find out if there's any big news on Friday in terms of lockdown or a local lockdown, not a national lockdown. So we're just holding our breath on that at the moment. But yeah, we'll just have to see how it goes. All right, gonna have a crack at doing the sharing. So what do I do again? It's old man syndrome. So he's trying to work a new way, isn't it? Hey.
So yeah, so just go up to the screen share.
Oh yeah, screen share. Click on that.
Share screen on your left there.
Yeah.
And then come down to your PowerPoint.
That one there.
That's it. Yep.
And
Press play on your PowerPoint.
Play on. Where's play on the PowerPoint?
It's just down here behind it.
That one.
That's the one.
Hey, see?
There we go.
It does work sometimes.
Could somebody just jump on Padlet quickly and just let us know that you are getting all this, because it's very radio silent out there. So if somebody could let us know that this is working, this is coming through, that'd be great.
Right, so I'm presuming that we're getting this. We are recording this, hopefully, and I'm hoping that that will work. It's all a new area for us, and we're seeing how it goes. It's very strange sitting in an empty room, looking at a camera and trying to gauge how things are going.
It's working.
Who says?
Well, I don't know if 3 anonymous people said it's working.
All right, so there we go. We seem to be doing something right. 3 people are getting it. So I'm going to be looking at photographing for layout. So I'm not going to be looking at any particular images. I'm just going to be suggesting how you can do a layout and how it will, come together. So photographing for a layout. So we've got quarter page to full page. When we talk about a quarter page, that is basically a quarter of the page. An image which occupies a quarter of the page going to a full page. So in this case, it would be the A4 page. So if you're doing double spread, then that would be A3, A3. Completely went out of my head then. So yeah, so that's what we're going to be looking at now. Be aware of the time. Okay, so remember to use like your compositional tools that we've been teaching you in the second year. So remember things like leading lines and bringing the viewer into a point of interest within the front cover. So like I keep on saying, and I will keep on saying it, your front cover has got to be your award-winning, attention-grabbing image. That's the one which has got to really grab our attention and bring us into the magazine, want us to actually look at it and say, wow, that's a fantastic piece of work. So that's got to be the award-winning image for that. Now, your front cover image doesn't have to relate to any articles within it. So it doesn't have to relate to the Instagram article or the science communication or your portfolio of images. It doesn't have to, it can be totally completely different. It be any kind of image that you want it to be, but I say but make sure it's a decent image. And I say decent in terms of not the actual quality of the image, but content decent. Just be careful with your front cover. So yes, so make sure that it's award-winning, going to grab my attention, make me want to pick up the magazine in, you know, the not in terms of the physical sense, but looking at it on the computer. All right, so yeah, that's very important. So then we go on to half pages where you're using images, excuse me, images which are going to be occupying half the page on the magazine. So when you have an image that is Steve's just taking a picture of me. When you have a this is very, very strange. This is when you have an image which is half a page and it's at the top of the page, right? This it indicates that this image is the important one. So it's all what the story is all about. So your really important images, the ones that you want the story to be about, you can use those usually at the top of the page. Now the ones what you put at the bottom, in the bottom section, they're there to actually support the story, give, you know, extra content to the story, but they're also there to sort of like support the writing in some way. So you want to be looking at images which actually, you know, do that. So in this particular case, the one we're looking at here, where it's got Jubilee Campus, we've got like flat roofs and those kind of things, which, you know, is a strong image, and it then gives the sense that those buildings are actually holding up, you know, the writing. So, you know, look at things like that. This again, like I'm saying, is only suggestions for you. These aren't hard and fast rules. These are just suggestions in the way that you could actually, you know, start structuring images to go within the written content of your magazine. So on quarter page images, these are the odd ones of, you know, of layout. Is how do you actually start laying out quarter page images? So you usually find that when you do quarter page ones, that there's usually a lot of writing is going on the page, and sometimes people, or, you know, people are putting magazines together, have a tendency to either put 2 quarter pages either at the top or the bottom and put writing in it. It looks a bit odd sometimes when you just got 1 quarter page image and then there's a massive writing around it. So you could actually, you know, just put a quarter image, say halfway down the page, and then just have a column of writing onto one side. So it's a case of playing around with those. I just do think, you know, for me personally, quarter page images just do look a little bit odd. Sometimes, you know, it's better to actually have odd shaped images on the page rather than these quarter ones. But it might be how you're laying the page out might be slightly different, and you might come up with something that's really interesting. So our double page spreads, these are really important ones. These are the ones that we kind of like start articles off with, really powerful images that we can lay text onto. So we're looking to have a negative space or some kind of negative space on the page as well, so that we can lay text down onto it. But we've also got to think about our colors within the images and how we're going to be laying text on those pages, and what kind of color text we're going to be using on those pages, and are we going to be using, like, you know, transparency backgrounds to support the text and that kind of thing. So when you're shooting, if you're deciding like you want to do a double page spread image, so it might be the contents page and stuff like that, you've got to think about really what colors are making up that image and how you're going to be using it. So if you had an image which had a large amount of negative space in it, and that negative space was like all of one color, either it be white, black, blue, pink, orange, or whatever, then that could make it a lot more easier for you. But if you have a double page spread with a negative space and there's tones of colors in there, then that can cause you problems. So you really have to think about what you're doing with the double page spreads and how they're going to work out. So on this one here, the picture we got here, there's a vast amount of dark area that we can lay text onto. Now, if you was actually producing a physical copy, which are not in this instance, but if you was, you'd have to bear in mind about these pages, these lines that come within our design. So you have the center line and we have the gutter line. So the gutter area, which is the part in the middle, we always try to avoid putting anything into that area so that, you know, it doesn't get lost within the fold. But with doing the PDF, it's not so bad. But if you ever come to think about doing it as a printed copy, you have to think about how much is going to fall down into the gutter as such. So like I say, we've got a nice dark area here that we have no problem whatsoever in laying down really any kind of colored text in there. In this case, I've used white, but it could have been blue, could have been orange, it could have been anything. So, you know, that works well. But we've also got to look at direction within images and how things are working in our favor. So you've got to treat the viewer or the reader of the magazine as if they're a simpleton, really, at the end of the day. And you've got to lead them in directions that you want them to go into for getting to another image or get into written content or anything really in that direction. So we've got an open space. We've got bright areas within this area here, which are then hopefully leading us across to the written part. It would have been more ideal had we got this person here actually looking towards the writing going over in this direction, and that would have led the reader over into this area. But overall, this picture is not too bad for being sort of like our double page spread for opening up our article. So on this one again, a nice image, and it could be used for a double page spread. But what we got problems here with is, like I was saying earlier, because you've got different tones within the image. So what kind of writing or color of writing are we going to be placing down on this image so that it becomes clear? So for the actual heading here, the wildflowers of Britain, what's been done here is used colors from within the image to actually then use within the title, and I think that works quite well. It's then when you start using your body text and what color are you going to be making that is where the problem comes into it. So think about, before you actually take the picture, how can I use text on this picture? What colors would work well with this image so that I can lay text down onto it? Now, if you're going to be putting down a double page spread, the last thing you really want to be doing is then trying to put down, say, like a white box or a black box to lay text onto, because then what's the point of actually having a whole double page spread image? You may as well just have a single page and then have a white page or a black page, or some other color of a page next to it. So if you, like say, if you're doing a double page spread, think about what kind of a color of font that you're going to be using within that page. So do we use a white one here? But unfortunately, if we're using a full page column, we're losing text area here. We can't see it. If we're using white, we're losing it into the highlighted area. So again, that could be a problem. Black on this side with this tonal range of images isn't working too bad. Also, we've got to look at in terms of, do we have like 2 or 3 slimmer columns of text, or do we go for that big bulky layout of text? And in some instances it works quite well, and in other instances it does put some readers off the fact that there's a massive text there that I've got to now read. So you could put the same amount of words into the page and into the page spread, but you can fool the reader by breaking it up into singular columns, and so it doesn't look as massive and as daunting as it would first appear. So in this one again, we got a fantastic image. We got sunburst there and moody colors, and you might first of all think about, well, there's a lot of dark area that I can lay white text onto. But again, is it readable? Does it work? Can I lay black text down and put a ghost white box behind it so I can still see the image and see the text as well? You won't know these things until you actually start taking the pictures and then bringing them back and putting them into your layout, and then you might think, oh, that's not going to work. So when I would come to this part of the layout, we've given you a long deadline to work with, but I wouldn't be leaving things until the last minute. You want to be photographing and seeing how those images are going to be working with your layout and how you can lay things out. You want to start that quite quickly so you can get, if you need to change anything, you've got time to change it. So you might take an image and you might think, well, that's going to work really well, but when you come to actually doing it into the layout, it doesn't work. So these are the problems that we're actually inviting you to work through and seeing how they can come together a lot better for you. Okay, so in terms of balancing the page, on this particular page here, we've got a panoramic image going across the bottom of the page. So the image is supporting our title and it's supporting our written information, which is going along with the title. But see how the actual balance works on the page. So with the particular colouring of the writing, that's been selected from tones within the image, and Steve will go through and stuff like that, how you can actually select out tones within the color of the images and to use within your headings. You don't have to. I mean, you could have just white headings, black headings, pink headings, whatever color headings you want. But it just does give a nice balance to the actual page layout when you're plucking out colors, the actual image, and then it gives a connection to it. But you see here, okay, if you could imagine there was lines going across from the home cooking going across to where the body of the text is, that body of text there actually fits nicely in with the home cooking. So it gives it a balance there. So if we had imaginary lines going across from sort of like the bottom of For Modern Life, it would line up with the body of text there. And if we had an imaginary line going across from Home Cooking, it would line up with the top of the writing there. So that gives it a nice balance. But also, if we had imaginary lines coming up from the side of this jar, it would line up with that. And if we had an imaginary line coming up from this side as well, it would line up. So we have an invisible square kind of structure, or a box shaped structure that we created there. And everything looks nice and balanced within the page. Again, these are just suggestions for you, but they're suggestions nicely. See with the jar lids, how they're supporting again the writing and the body text. So these are things that you could actually work with. So again, using images here and using the images to help lead the viewer to where you want them to go. So in this particular image here, this is quite a nice image. So you've got the actual squirrel eye, which is looking out towards the viewer. So, you know, that's making connections with the viewer. But the nose or the snout, what's a squirrel's nose called? Do we know? I don't know. So the eye is looking towards me, but the snout and the mouth is actually pointing to where you could lay, you know, the heading of your article. So a heading of an article doesn't always have to be at the top. It can be a certain part of the way down the page. Sometimes I've seen a heading of an article right down at the bottom of the page. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But you, like I say, if you put in the heading of the article in the middle of the page, make sure it really stands out and that people can see that's what the article is all about. So it's just, again, different ways of actually laying out your magazine with using images. Make your images work for you so that they help the viewer, you know, progress through and give direction to what they're going to be reading. This one here, these two images here, we normally read from left to right in our publications. So it's nice that you can get images to look from left to right. That gives direction again within the page. But sometimes you might get the opposite happen. So we've got two kingfishers here. One is looking across left to right, the other one is sort of right to left, left to right, right to left. I think I'm getting that right. So, you know, in this way, we can do what we call bookending. We can book images. So both of the kingfishers are actually looking towards our main text that we are actually writing. And so again, colours being brought out from the actual image again give balance to the page. So we've got this kingfisher looking down at this body of text, and then we've got this kingfisher which is also looking across at this body of text, but it's also supporting this image here, is supporting the body of text which is above it. What we've got going on here is actually we could have a pull quote. This is called a pull quote, which is actually been pulled out from the body of the text and placed within the negative space of the image. So this could be, say, like an important quote, an important bit of information, something which, you know, you really want the viewer to look at, and it gives context to what you're writing and gives a stepping stone, a foundation to the actual written information as well. So this would be important information that you're actually putting within the body of the image. So that helps as well. So again, this is a different form of bookending that we're doing, where one kingfisher is looking one way and one kingfisher is looking another way. So we could have actually just swapped these two images over. So this one was over this side and this one was over this side, and then they're looking towards each other. But again, we're just using the shape of the kingfisher and their beaks to actually start point us towards written information. So again, that's another form of bookending with images. You know, the ideal situation here would have been if these actual birds were the same size within the image, and that would have made it a lot better. But I still think it works to a certain, you know, degree. But on this part here, where we've got the riverbank, see how that is now just slightly disappearing into the background. So again, we need to be careful with the color of font that we're actually using there. So again, using like panoramics, we use panoramics quite a lot on a different form of page layout, and that's when we come to doing sort of like web work. Sometimes you get a banner image or a panoramic. So it's quite nice to use like a panoramic image going across a double page spread at the top of the page, or even sort of like, well, you can put it at the bottom, and you could even, if you try it out, in the middle. So if you've got something which would make a really nice panoramic image, then again, play around with your page and see how it works, and would it work, won't it work, you know, in those kind of things. But on this particular image here that we got, if we place this one down at the bottom, it wouldn't work as well as it does at the top. And the reason why it wouldn't work at the top is because it's actually more of a skyscape. Is that right? Skyscape? Skyscape? It's a skyscape. So it's more of a skyscape. You know, it just don't sound right when I say it. It's got sky in it, and it's at the top. So if you put it down here at the bottom, right, it wouldn't work as well. So if you had, say you've done a panoramic of shops or something like that, somebody walking along or something like that, then that would work down at the bottom, because it's then kind of like you would be looking at it at kind of eye level. So those kind of things would work. If you was having a panoramic which is an abstract kind of image, then you could lay that, say, through the middle. So it's, again, it's dependent on the type of image that you've got. So put in one with lots of sky in it down at the bottom, I don't think it would be balanced. But then you could put one that's got, say, lots of sea down at the bottom, or a landscape or something like that. So it's again thinking before you take the picture, how's this going to work for my layout? That's really the fundamentally important part of it. So it's not about just going out and snapping any kind of picture. It's thinking about how's this going to go into the magazine? How's it going to work with the text and the fonts and the colors and other images as well? So those are the really important things. Just this again is just like balancing the page out. So we've got working our way up the page and working our way down to columns of text. So, you know, that's again, just deciding how you can do layout, important quotes, pull text, pull quotes, pull text. I'm making stuff up as I go along. I'm sure I am. Pull quotes. That's the official term for them. You pull the text out and make it a pull quote. There you go. I'm getting there. So again, there's nothing wrong with this. Might not necessarily be for your portfolio, but it might be you've taken a couple of images for, say, the science communication article, and they are beautiful images. I'm sure you can all do beautiful images, but they're beautiful images. And you think to yourself, I don't want to put text around these. I just want the viewer to look at these images. And that is good. You can do that. You know, put an image, double page spread, all by itself, or, you know, half a page, but taking up half of the page in sort of like in this kind of fashion. Think about your images. Like I said to you last week, this ain't costing you in terms of actually printing costs or anything like that. So, you know, you can use as many pages as you want. So if panoramic, a beautiful panoramic going across a double page spread, halfway down the page or 3/4 of the way or whatever, do that. Then the magazine's yours to lay out, isn't it? And, you know, if you want to give, you know, space to the picture for the viewer to look at, then I recommend doing that. It works really well. Again, traveling from one page to another page. Can you use an image which helps you go from this page to that page and even to help you turn over the page? That's what you could be looking at with your images. So on this particular image here, we got the boat direction moving, and then the pole what indicates the direction we're going, so that you, again, your viewer is a stupid person, help them travel through the magazine, give them directions as to which way that they need to go. And you can do this with your imagery in quite simple forms. You know, I particularly like this image because the water is just absolutely still. Now, if we had ripples of water coming along and say traveling against the boat, then this picture might not work as well. But because it's like a flat mirrored surface, there's no indication from the water as to which way direction is going. So this one works really well, you know, with the leading lines, you know, and the shape giving us direction. You know, the boat even looks like a mouth talking to you, doesn't it? Eh? Just different ways of laying out images, you know, so that you don't always have to follow convention in terms of having half pages and so on. You can have those odd shape images, but in this particular one, it's bringing colors together as well within the actual structure of the page. So you've got similar colors going on into images. So then we start talking about sort of like symmetry and reflection within our layout that we're doing. So it's almost if one image is connected to another image, and you played out those visual games with the colors and the tones within the images, which help. How are we doing for time?
About half an hour.
Oh, I talk more than I think sometimes, eh?
Been telling me that for years.
And again, you know, if you've got empty space and you wanted to do some kind of index with your images, you know, you could lay your images out in this particular way and then actually add in data from the images. You don't have to do this, but it's just a different way of actually thinking about, you know, your structure and your page layout and how things are going to be coming together. Again, using cutouts and direction within the page. So in this particular way of laying things out, using circular shapes and putting images into them, they become almost like full stops to the body of text that you're writing. And think about cutting images out so that you may be just having the subject and then a nice white area that you can lay written information. And again, this is something that Steve may go into in Affinity Publisher and stuff like that, about cutting text, cutting images out and laying text behind it. So in this particular one, healthy eating, you can't see all the word healthy, but you recognize it as being healthy because we do that automatically. So laying text behind actual images and stuff like that. Okay, so that's me done on that particular shooting or layout. So other talks, I'll be starting to put those onto Moodle in the next couple of weeks. But you know, next week Steve's doing Affinity Publisher. The week after we'll be doing a couple of more talks, and then we'll be going to definitely full online. So we'll let you know how those go. So now I'm just going to hand over to Steve. Thank you for listening to me. Hopefully you did listen to me. You haven't nodded off and everything should be. Oh, sorry, I'm looking over here. Thank you for listening to me. I'm still trying to get used to this. Thank you again for looking at me. I now realise my audience is in that direction and not that direction, but I'm handing over to Steve, if you're still awake.
It won't be for long. Right, good morning. Let's see how this goes. This is a very strange setup. It's strange to get used to. So I'm going to take you on a run through of Affinity Photo and editing your image for your front cover. Now I've chosen this image which I've shot, which at first look, it's a bit of a bland landscape, but there's actually potential here for a design cover, something to pull us into and to use some of the basic photographic techniques such as leading lines, etc. And one of the reasons I shot this in mind was due to the fact of the variance in contrast between the image. So having the dark lower half of the cover and having a lighter top half lets me play around with some text, font layout, etc. It's given me lots of space there to lay things in, especially down here with this dark black gravel area, soil area. I can lay in other images and my bylines, etc. And what's attracted me to this is the fact that I really want to go quite stylized with this in leading up this yellow and orange color, bringing this up in terms of a saturation, so that we've got a bit of a leading line, a bit of a line that guides the eye and draws people into this contrast with a splash of color through here. And the misty hills and the broken paths and that sort of thing just give a bit of a mystery and sense of journey in the image. I didn't realize that's going a bit down the art route, but that's exactly what you end up thinking when you stop to analyze these images and you think, what does that front cover do for me? What does that, why am I attracted to pick up that cover, or what is it that's making me, enticing me to explore further because of this image? It starts to be because, well, it's an interesting landscape. It looks a bit mysterious. I want to see what this is a bit more about. And so that's what I'm going to do with this cover. And these are things as I've shot the image, as I've considered the image, as I've considered its use, etc., is that I'm already starting to think, okay, my title will go up here against this grey and white. It's not completely white, and I don't plan on making it completely white, but it's a nice clean top part for the masthead of the front cover, the title of the magazine. Got a splash of colour, leading lines through the image, and when I could darken this down here as we come down the image, I can add in my bylines, which are my subheadings. I can add in my additional imagery, and it gives me quite a lot to play with in terms of color and font choices available, because I'm leaning against a darker background or a lighter background. And what my initial reaction or initial thought process is to do, and what I will do next week, so this is like part one, where we get the image ready for editing, or we edit it, get it ready for putting into Publisher. And then part two next week, I will start off in Publisher with this image edited, starting to lay down the text, starting to lay out the cover elements. But I already know that my masthead, for example, will reflect the color of the sort of orangey or yellow that I end up with by the time I've applied a bit of color correction here. So we're just going to go through some basics of Affinity. So I've opened these up and I've gone straight to my develop persona. Now, if you remember, there's a couple of different personas to use in Affinity. And because I've opened up a raw file, it's taken me immediately to the develop persona. But I always suggest that you start there with all your images, because it's quite a straightforward editing process in the fact that they are, I'm just going to move the channel window over there so I can see the sliders. It is slider based, so I can literally increase or decrease things like my exposure, my contrast on the image, brightness of the ambience, getting as bad as you now. And I'm seeing what sort of effect I'm getting straight away from it, and it's non-destructive. I haven't done anything to the original image. Let me give it a little boost of clarity there. And at this stage, I'm only going to give it a little boost of saturation just to, I mean, I might give that, you know, take it to the extreme just to see what sort of colors I can pull from the image. But I'm going to pull them back because I'm going to use a masking technique with an adjustment layer just to bring out those colors there. But right now, I'm just getting a type of base image ready. So I've just gone through a couple of the basic adjustments in terms of lighting. Now, because it is a front cover, and because your front cover is the main marketing pitch for your magazine, you don't want to go too cold or too alien with it and therefore turn away viewers that might be interested. By adding just a little bit of warmth, we're making the landscape look mysterious. Yeah, it's wet, it's grey, it's misty, but by adding a little bit of warmth there, it's not hopefully going to turn everybody away too much. And now I'm just going to look at some of the more subtle adjustments here, so like the shadows, just to darken down those outer edges. Highlights, just protect nothing is over. I'm just going to go back and add a little bit more warmth to that actually. I've just realized as I'm clicking on these, I'm turning them off. I thought I was minimizing the windows. I'm not, I'm turning them off. So there we go. That's what my image should be looking like. Okay, I'm quite happy with everything in the lens. Noise and detail refinement, I will do that towards the end. Remember that the last thing you want to do is apply any sharpening to your image, because you don't want to apply lots of sharpening to an image, increasing the contrast between the pixels, and then applying all sorts of adjustments or corrections, because all you're doing is then muddying the pixels a bit further. So do your sharpening at the end. Now at this stage, I could color correct, I could add a tone curve, I could boost that here, but I'm going to do that in my adjustment layers on the level. So I'm just going to click develop, and Affinity has then processed that image for me, that raw file, and I'm now working on an Affinity document or JPEG of that image, and I've got my background pixel. So I'm just going to add a couple of adjustments to this, and the one I want to go to first of all is my hue saturation adjustment. And all I'm doing is I'm concentrating here on this area in the middle. I'm just looking at the yellows and oranges, etc. So I'm just looking, I actually want to make them a little bit more orange just to draw that in, bring that up a little saturation. Now I am aware that I'm working on screens that are being recorded, so I am going to push this a little bit more extreme than I would normally for normal taste, purely just so you can see the effect that's happening. So I'm aware on screen recording, sometimes subtle changes you don't always see by the time it's been rendered and saved. So I'm just going to give this a little bit more push than I normally would, just so you can see the effect. And again, just brush that up. Okay, I'm going to close that down. Now, if you remember correctly, from last year, the little white rectangle that we get to the side of the adjustment layer is what we call our mask. And I'm just going to click on our mask, and I'm going to invert it, which means I've hidden that effect from the layer. So you can't see it right now because it's got a black mask over it. And at the corner of my eye, I can see David yawning and checking his watch. So I've already put him to sleep with this. So I'm doing my best to keep you guys engaged. That's it. I see everything.
It's the oxygen levels in the room.
It's the oxygen levels in the room. Okay, with my mask selected, I've selected a white paint brush. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to check the width of that brush, and I'm going to take down the hardness of the brush. I want to take down to make it more of a softer brush, so that when we paint back in the mask, it blends nicely into the image, and we don't end up with really defined brush lines on it. I have to say that last year's second year coursework, the editing on it was fantastic. I think it was quite I don't remember many images where I looked at it and was like, whew, that's gone a bit over the top, or, you know, a bit too in depth. It was all really, really good editing. It was the right balance of editing You guys have done some fantastic work to make it look very natural. So I'm just going to again bring up my brush. There we go. And using the white paint on this black mask, I'm just going to start painting back in the effect. So I'm just using the paintbrush, and you can see the saturated colors coming back in there, but I'm leaving the sort of darker tones, the black and whites of the image. Bring it back in a little bit there just to draw that viewer's eye. And because of the diagonal going up across the image, it's going to draw our viewer in a little bit at the back there. And using the keyboard shortcuts just to enlarge the brush and just paint back in that effect. And you can see over here that I've got a little white line across it. That's just where I've brought that back in there. Okay, so let's see. I don't think there's really anything. I'll add a bit more vibrance to that, just to punch that up a little bit. And there we go. Now if I turn that off, you can see that I've just really brought out a pop of color in that middle ground there as well. Now, one thing I haven't done is cropped or formatted this image for the page layout. And that's because although I usually say, or I've said last time, the first thing you want to do is crop your images, I'm not at the moment, because I want to leave it for inserting into Publisher, because I want to leave as much information as possible for fitting into that A4 format. If I was to crop an A4 frame now, I'm not really giving myself much wiggle room if I then put it on the page and say, oh, that doesn't quite sit right, or I need a bit more space, etc. I'm just going to leave the image at its full size so that when I then bring it in next week into Publisher, I've got a bit more wiggle room to go with. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my healing brush there, and for Affinity I'm going to use the in-painting brush because it's fairly good and intuitive, and I'm just going to remove some of these lighter spots that might detract once we put on some text. So I'm just darkening down these bits down here, because when I look at the image as a whole, some of those highlights down there were just catching my eye, and I want to darken that down. Just leave the texture, but darken down some of the highlights, because I want the text and the additional image to stand out there. Now, the additional image that I've chosen is something a bit polar opposite to this, just to give an idea of cutout and putting an image on. It's not something I would normally choose, but for the purposes of demonstration, I'm going to use. I'm quite happy with that as it is just now. Okay, not gone over the top in terms of adjustment, just done what I've needed to do in terms of enhancing what I want to there, and that's ready for me to then take over to Publisher next time and start laying out text and other elements. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to start looking at my secondary image, and I chose this one purely for the sake of a cutout. Basically, I'm going to cut out this fence area here and this row to then put as my second additional image and put it down in the corner to look like I'm taking it over from a fence. Not something I would typically do, but for the purposes of this, just something simple to demonstrate with, as simple as in terms of idea rather than the technique I'm going to use, because I'm not the best at cutting out, never have been, but thankfully the tools are getting easier. Just going to remove. The other thing as well is that as I keep coming back to this front cover, I'm seeing more and more little bits that might be distracting me. So just more little circular highlights that are catching my eye that I then want to get rid of as well, which is always a really good thing. It's not just to edit the image and bang out the front cover within 5-10 minutes, but just to take your time, come away from it, come back to it and look at it with slightly fresh eyes. So these areas down here were catching my eye when I came back from my other image. So again, I'm just going to apply some basic adjustments to this. I'm just going to increase that contrast slightly. And the reason I'm doing that is to make the cutting out easier as well, or giving the software a bit more of an easier time. And boost that color a little bit. And that's where I'm going to leave that just now, because I'm quite happy with the colors and texture as they are. But if I don't finish it all in Affinity Photo just now, it's not an issue, because once I'm in Publisher, I can still make adjustments to there. So I'm just going to duplicate my layer. I'm going to turn off the background one, so I've always got something to come back to. And now I'm going to try and make a selection of this robin and fence that I want to keep. So I'm going to start off with the selection brush tool itself. I'm fairly confident, famous last words, but fairly confident that there's enough contrast here. So I'm just painting over what I want to select. And then adding it to selection. It's gone a bit too much there. So if I, where's my Alt key gone? If I click on subtract, I can just paint that back in. Go back to add. I'm just going to add the robin in now. Just going to shrink the brush size down. I'm using keyboard shortcuts to make my life easier, and I'm using Command plus and minus for zooming in and out. That would be Control plus and minus on your PC, and I'm using the bracket keys for increasing and decreasing my brush size as well. So just to make the selection process that bit more effective, I'm just doing very gentle brush clicks, and trying to get as close as possible as I can. Okay, get the beacon, just like to add. Get his foot and leg. And then what I'm going to do is come to subtract, take out the part in between. Need to go back in with a smaller brush and just bring in this leg and the toes. And I'm just double checking everywhere. As I go, spacebar brings up your hand icon so you can move around your image. I'm just going to paint in this square here because I don't want that to come the way I want to make it look like this fence post is on that hillside. And I'm just going to add this last little bit here. What I'm actually going to do is, just for the sake of giving myself some extra material to work with, is I'm just going to select this fence part as well. Increase my brush size. So again, it's just giving me a little bit more to work with than having to come back and recut it out later on when I realised, like, oh, I could have done with a little bit more fence post of that. It's easier for me to cut that out or delete that after than it is to then come back and replace the image. So that's the robin and the fence selected. I'm just going to refine that. It's looking quite good. Just increase slightly. Smooth and feather the edges. So again, it blends a bit nicer with the cutout. It's just not that sharp cutout. You can just see another little part that needs tidying up. So I'm going back in, double checking everything. Bear in mind, if you're on add or And zoom right in. So far it's been a relatively straightforward selection, and I'm just using the paintbrush selection tool, but I could use other methods for selecting, the marquee tools, the magic selection wand, that sort of thing. At Affinity, I do find that their brush selection tool is fairly accurate. So now with that selected, I'm going to go to my select menu top, and I'm going to invert the pixel selection, because although I want the robin and the fence, I don't want the background, so I've inverted it, and hopefully if I hit delete, it should then remove it all, and this is now on a transparent background. Okay, and I'm just going to leave that there, because that's then ready to then apply on this image into this corner, because I'm already thinking about my design. I'm going to have the fence and robin down here, with text coming down here and down here of other articles, and my masthead up here. So that's my two images ready. So we've done some adjustments to color, vibrance, and exposure. We've done some masking to bring our attention to certain parts of the image and apply adjustments just to certain parts of the image. And we have a cutout ready for our secondary image to apply it to this one here. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to apply it to the photograph as it is now. I would then export this one as a JPEG. I'm going to put the quality up high, best quality, whole document, 14 meg, that's a good size. So I then export that. I'll put that on my desktop, save that for next week. For my cutout, I'm going to export it slightly differently. So I'm going to go File and Export. And because I want to retain the transparent background, all these pixels, I don't want it to fill in with white, I'm going to select PNG. PNG file types will always retain the transparencies if you've got any transparencies in any of your layers. Whereas if I exported it to a JPEG, it would automatically apply it to a white background. So if I opened it up, it'd automatically be in a white background. Whereas if I opened up this PNG, it would just be the fence and robin that would come up. So I'm just going to export them. Normally I would give it a file name as well, so I know what I'm working with, but because I'm just working with two images, I'm not going to worry too much about it. So they are now on my desktop, ready for use next week. So you can see there, the PNG has saved the transparency and it's ready to be placed onto there. And I'm going to do that in Publisher again, so that I can work on different layers within the front cover document. Like David said, I can put text behind slightly, or I can put text in front, but I'm leaving that to work the layers later on. If I tried to apply the robin to the picture beforehand and bring that in, that robin is then stuck on top of that hillside, and I can't then work with it as a separate layer later on. So that's why I've saved it as a PNG. And again, I've left them as open, the original aspect ratios, original file sizes, again, so that when it comes to doing the page layout, I've got options to resize, readjust the crop, etc. I haven't cropped it at the A4 just now. All I've done is get my color and my tones ready for placing in to Publisher, where I can then do a bit more work as well, which we'll go through next week. This doesn't want to come back up now. There we go. So I will stop sharing the content then, go back to the meeting screen. So thank you again. Like I said, we've got some information coming, working on a couple of things about the Affinity software. That information will be forthcoming as soon as we've got that planned out, or that ready to be actionable there as well. I'll say cheerio.
Okay, so that's it for this week. If you've got any questions, give us an email or drop something onto Padlet and we'll have a look at it. I'll send out an email towards the end of next week or Monday of next week to give you some details on any information that comes our way and what we'll be doing for next Wednesday's class. So, but like I say, if you've got any questions, just drop me an email and we'll get to answer those questions. So thank you for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye bye for now.
Go for it, mate. Just click the big red button.